So this morning I thought I'd share a little video with you guys. I was just filming myself and learning how to film myself better by using my camera and a tripod. So I was also planning to trim the horses' hooves. And back in the day I used to trim the horses' hooves a lot with a grinder. I used to have a cordless grinder, but that got stolen. Also called affirmative shopping here in South Africa. And since then I've never trimmed horses with the grinder again. This morning I decided to try out my cord grinder, and it's a little bit more cumbersome than the cordless grinder, but it also works and it does the same job. One just has to be really careful as to keep the cords and the lead out of the way of the horse. Also, it's highly recommended to not do this on a cement floor, since a horse can stand through a cord, especially if it's wearing steel shoes, on a cement floor. So I am working in loose dirt here, which means that if the horse were to stand on the cord, it wouldn't break the cord and get an electric shock. You will also note that I don't have an apron on and I don't have gloves on. It's not that I do not own gloves or an apron, it's just I find it more comfortable to work like this. And no, I did not grind my fingers once, or my pants once, or the horse. Okay, so this brings us to another question that people may have is, isn't this dangerous? Can't you hurt the horse? Yes and no. If one were to make a mistake and have a slip of hand and touch the horse with the grinder, you would really need to apply a lot of pressure to break the skin even. And then, even if you do break the skin, it wouldn't be a cut like a cutting disc would cut into the horse. It's an abrasive disc, so it would literally just remove a little bit of hair. And not that I slip and touch the horse at all, as I am very skilled with this grinder. I used to make saddle trees where I also use the grinder a lot, so you will see later in this video that I'm pretty skilled with the grinder, and it's like an extension of my arm. I'm really comfortable with this tool. And if you were planning on trimming your horses with a grinder, I would recommend a few things first. Firstly, I would recommend a proper education as a farrier or a barefoot trimmer from a qualified farrier. At least to become proficient with knowing what it is that you want to be trimming and what angles and proportions you are trimming towards. Now, this video is not about the intricacies of hoof trimmings per se. It's not an educational video as to how to trim a hoof. This is more an illustration of trimming hooves with a grinder, using a grinder, and then also bearing in mind that these horses have never ever been trimmed with a grinder. So the purpose of this video is for me to practice my filming of myself, but also then for those who are interested can learn how to teach a horse to stand for being trimmed with a grinder. Here you can see Volley has also come to help us. He's our border collie, and he's always herding the horses, and even if the horses are far away and I want to feed them, Volley ends up fetching them for me, as I just tell him to bring them, and then he brings them. And so the horse we're dealing with here is Quima. She's a 14-year-old Boerperd cross thoroughbred cross warm blood mare, and she's never foaled before. I actually want to put her to a stallion this year, as we are just starting to enter spring soon. So I'm looking out for nice stallion material to breed a foal from Quima. Now, Quima is very used to having her feet trimmed, but not with the grinder. So as you can see here, when I touch her foot with the grinder, she will flinch. And then I will just make her used to it by doing a little bit at a time and then putting the foot down again. She's now already accepting the sensations of the vibrations of the grinder on her feet. And so yeah, now I'm getting a bit more confident with her, and I'm going to grip the hoof between my knees. And you can see with my left hand, I'm shielding the abrasive bits of hoof that's coming off of the disc. because they will be flying into the horse's belly at some angle, especially the angle I am at there. And that's why I keep my hand there to catch some of those bits of hoof, because the sensation of those will sometimes startle the horse. You also saw me bringing the grinder close to the belly of the horse earlier, and that is so that the horse can get used to the wind that's made by the grinder working. So it's both the sound and the sensations of the bits of hoof flying against the horse and the wind. Now here you can see I'm on the off side of the horse, and I literally have to desensitize her all over again because I'm working on the other side now. And this is something people often forget about training horses, is they train one side and they think the horse is trained, but when you do the exact same thing from the other side, the horse doesn't want to accept that. Okay, so also when horses are a little bit nervous, they will make a poo, which caused me to have to go and get the shovel and first clean up before I could carry on with the job. And the character you just see moving out of frame is my European wolf called Moon, grey wolf, and he loves the horses and he plays with them. He actually grabs them by the tail and then makes as if he's going to eat them, but he's literally just playing with them, and most of the horses don't mind it at all. Alright, so here we are back on the near side of the horse, just doing a bit of tidying up of the hoof, also getting a bit more used to the work. You see how I'm moving the horse's feet, and that is just to reassure the horse that, you know, I know what I'm doing here and I'm going to put you where I need you to be. I'm not going to allow you to just trample wherever you want to go. I am going to position you where I need you to be. Now right there I was holding on to the hoof a little bit and just telling her, look, I'm not just going to also put down the foot whenever you move. You're going to have to yield it to me at some point. Right, so there I'm hollowing out the fissures of the frog and the sole around the frog. The frog is that center part of the hoof. So the disc I'm working with here is a flat 36 grit wood sanding disc that is mounted on a rubber pad. So the pad is slightly flexible, and this particular paper disc is quite durable, and it extends a little bit beyond the rubber pad, so it gives you that little tip of flexibility, that kind of the tip of the disc bends backwards a little bit, like at an angle, which helps us to make nice angles on the hoof. So here you can see I'm working on the Mustang roll of this barefoot trim. There's still ample hoof on the foot, material on the hoof. I'm not doing it extremely short because we do ride these horses barefoot, and we don't trim them extremely short, and we never ever trim them footsore. So yeah, just a little bit about my background. I was a farrier for many years, and I also did barefoot riding and endurance riding barefoot, and that is where I also learned to do the grinder trimming, because it's just easier for hoof maintenance to very quickly run a grinder over the hoof than to take a hoof knife and start digging into the hoof and sometimes removing more sole than you were wishing to. The other factor here is that we are now still in winter, and it's the dry season here, so our horses' hooves are very dry at the moment, and it makes it a lot harder to do a trim with conventional tools when the hooves are all dried out like that. And you can see in this close-up shot here that I just use the edge of the grinding disc to basically sculpt the original shape of the hoof, or the ideal shape of the underside of the hoof, out of this mass of sole and wall and frog that has overgrown over a few weeks. Alright, so now we're moving on to my filly. Her name is Gracie, and she is about 19 months old. We adopted Gracie and her mother when her mother was already very, very old. So unfortunately, we had to have the mother put down. And Gracie was weaned at 5 months old. And yeah, so I've had her ever since she was 3 months old. So Gracie was actually quite a bit jumpy when I first approached her with the grinder. So I had to take her to the picadero, which is a square pen or kraal that we work the horses in. Also, the Spaniards like to use a picadero. And I first worked Gracie in a picadero also using a flag, which is a long whip, a long stick of a whip with a plastic bag at the end. And I was just desensitizing her for the sensations, also the sounds and the sights of this flag behind and above her eye and under her legs. And that took about, I would say, 15 to 20 minutes of work. And by the time Gracie accepted the flag, I immediately let go of that exercise and brought her back to her feeding place here. And then she just accepted the grinder very easily after the desensitizing session with the flag. All right, so that's Gracie giving her feet nicely. And just put it in front on my knee as I finish up a little bit of flaring that she has on the lateral side of this near fall. What you'll find is young horses often are prone to flaring on the hooves because their hooves are still developing and expanding and molding and modeling according to what they are going to eventually be when the horse is fully grown. So I usually just tidy up the flaring of the hoof from the front. All right, so first make her used to me touching the hind feet again. And you'll see me rubbing the leg of the horse every so often, and you see that I'm rubbing the coronary band of the horse's hoof, and that kind of distracts the horse because the horse feels me rubbing the hoof, the top part where the hair is, where the skin connects with the hoof, and they feel me rubbing that, and then it takes their mind off what I'm doing with the grinder. And then once they accept the grinder, they'll feel the vibrational sensations of the grinder on their hooves, and it seems to me that they actually quite like those sensations. They for sure don't dislike it, the actual vibrations of the grinder. They find it quite pleasing, I believe. So as you'll see, these hooves are not long at all. They just need a little bit of tidying up and putting a little bit of a roll on the edge of the hoof, which we call the Mustang roll. And you'll see I'm working pretty fast with the grinder. I'm kind of just feeling the shape and the edges with the grinder's blade, and not really focusing too much on one specific area, but I'm allowing the grinder blade to glide over the edges and in smooth strokes that flow into each other, so as to create a whole sculpture, not just a series of notches in the hoof. And I'm not pressing down on the grinder that much at all. I'm literally using the weight of the grinder in my hand and just suspending the grinder's weight in my hand, and then just letting the abrasive disc feel its way through the dead hoof material. There I'm cleaning out the center cleft of the frog and touching up the wall, the outer walls. Now I'm busy with the fissures of the frog and where the heel buttress goes. Okay, now I'm putting the roll on. See how quickly this all goes in real time. This is not sped up at all. This is the actual time that the process took. Just feeling the shape with the grinder. As I said, the grinder becomes an extension of my hand. I'm so comfortable with this tool. It's like a musician with their instrument. There we go. Putting a nice roll to it. And in the end, you're looking for a shape that's symmetrical and that's wholesome looking and that's strong looking, and a shape that doesn't have any sharp edges or bits that look like they can break off. So the idea is to work towards the integrity of the hoof. And you see how well developed this horse's frog is. Nice and wide, and it's not contracted in the heels at all. So I'm leaving most of the frog intact. I'm just taking off the dead layer. And I like a very wide frog that can cause hoof expansion as the horse puts their foot down. Here we go, just finished tidying up the hind feet. And now I'm going to just polish the front hooves a little bit more. You can see how nice and open these hooves are already on such a young horse. They're not contracted at all. And things that cause contracted hooves are multiple. One is genetics. Inbreeding and bad genetics can cause contracted hooves. Also, spending long periods of time inside the stables, especially in the developmental stages of a young horse. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video.